there. How are you?
I'm good. I Right before we started, I went up and grabbed I have a bunch of these, because they had to be each labeled properly of photos because I promised myself that there are some photos in here, but this is for those listening, this is the mock prize. This is us co-judges.
Oh my gosh.
Name up there.
Wait, hold it up closer to the camera oh my gosh, look how serious we are. Like, don't mess.
Look how hard we worked on getting that high front in the
Oh my
hair.
gosh. That's,
Uh, there's so many in here. There's so many of all kinds of things. Old boyfriends, parties, all kinds of fun stuff. But wow, we really worked on that hair. We really, really worked on that hair. But I love looking back at these things. But I
oh
promised
my
I would.
gosh. Yeah, me too. You'll definitely have to bring one of those to our next dinner.
What I'd
So,
love to do is I'd actually love to digitally, like, make these all digital. But
yeah.
this boys and girls is called a photo album. Is what we used to do. We used to print photos of ourselves and put them in albums. This one you're going to really love. Just one more for those watching. Okay. This is 1988. Oh my gosh. This is you and me in,
Aw, with
remember the
our
bob
braces.
and the bob? You had the best
Yeah.
bob. Why did anyone let me give myself bangs? I don't know. I don't know what happened in
Well,
1988.
they were super cute at the time, but that has been one of the things, like, because of my own trials with bangs, has been like, to my girls, I try to like let them figure out life and learn as they go, but I'm
Right.
like, not with bangs. I'll just tell you it doesn't end well. So no
Yeah.
bangs. So,
Yes, that is true.
all right. So, well, here we are. We did one episode a couple last week,
Yep.
and we're here on episode number two. And what we're going to talk about today is what's next. Many of us who are midlife, so we're both 51, which I love having a group of friends where we're all basically exactly the same age. But anyway, we're both 51. I think square, like by anybody's standard, that's pretty squarely in midlife.
Yep.
And we spend a lot of time kind of thinking about, like reflecting on where we've been, where we want to go. And I do a lot of this work with my clients as well in my coaching practice. So I wanted to just start with a question for you about
Mhm.
how you think about midlife, like where you've been, and what kind of questions you're asking yourself as you look forward to the next, hopefully, 50 years.
You know what's so funny? When I go to the doctor now, my regular, my well woman visit or whatever, the last couple of times that I've gone, the doctor like looks at me, and he's like, "How are you?" Like, like in this like really like purposeful way. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I'm okay. And he's like, I'm like, why? Like I'm at like a well woman visit. And he's like,
Right.
once they're over 45, 47, they come in here and they tell me they think they're going crazy. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think I'm going crazy. Like
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that way. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out like why there's this sort of like thread around being like midlife age wise, but sort of not end of life in your career, but like most of us have been doing working for almost 30 years at this point, not including, whatever non-formal jobs that we had. And so like I think for me, when I think about like midlife and this sort of identity crisis that everybody's talking about right now, it's really about sort of like a shift in priorities and a shift in identities because you've sort of I'm not looking to aspire any more in my career. I'm looking to contribute more, which is different.
Mhm.
I'm not looking to acquire more, right? I'm not necessarily, so it's just sort of for me, a lot of what I think about when you ask about like sort of how I think about this time right now, I sort of think about it as a, opportunity for me to sort of think about what I want to give my attention to.
Mhm.
And I think when you're kind of growing up or earlier in your career or younger and all of those things, like you don't actually get to make that choice, right? Because whatever you're trying to family, build your whatever. Now I feel like I get to choose a little bit more what I focus on. And to me, that's a lot of how I spend my time. What about you?
Yeah.
What does it mean for
Well,
you?
Yeah, yeah. But so before I answer that, I would say,
Oh,
that to me is a really admirable position to be in. Because you
right.
probably know from talking with other friends and colleagues that not everybody feels like that.
Hmm.
And it may be, from someone who's had a front row seat to watch your trajectory, I would say, you have made very intentional choices along the way. You've had this steady progression. You're in a position right now of significant influence. And so to be at that place where you can be very intentional about what's next, a lot of people would like to be there. Uh,
True.
because if you don't feel like you've had the kind of impact up until this point, some people kind of look at those years they have left with some
Mm.
anxiety, like time's running out and I want to achieve something. Um, and they might be struggling with like, what is that thing? And when you combine that question with some sense of time pressure, then it can create some angst and some anxiety. So I would just reflect back that I think that's wonderful for you to be in that position to be really thoughtful about it and not feel pressure to continue working just solely for financial reasons or solely chasing this feeling that you haven't achieved what you wanted to yet.
That has something to do with the field that I'm in because
Mhm.
public education in general is sort of a service minded, it's sort of grounded in this idea of like purpose, right? And
Mhm.
so I also wonder if I'm privileged not only because of the opportunities I've had earned and sort of had the opportunity to lead in, but also sort of the nature of the work I do is incredibly fulfilling
Mhm.
in sort of really personal ways that I wonder if I'd feel differently if I was in another field. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Maybe, and I think it does have because and it's so funny because it occurred to me after our last conversation that we hadn't explained to people who don't know us kind of what we do.
Right.
So I think so it might be helpful just say a little bit
Yeah.
about what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. You know what's so funny? I saw this thing on Instagram this morning that said best friends have no idea what each other does. I think
Okay.
remember I sent a text a while ago and I'm like, we should all do a girls' night where we each do a PowerPoint presentation about what each other does,
Yeah.
like, because I'm like, it's like when you don't know what your parents do, and you're like, I don't know, this is their
Yeah.
job title. But I'm currently the chief of staff for a public school system, for a large public school system. But I've spent my career in public education. So I was a special educator and a speech pathologist. That was what I got my master's in. I was a principal of an elementary school. I was a supervisor of schools, pre-K through 12. So I led and supervised. I was basically the principal's boss for a number of years. And I currently, as the chief of staff, which a lot of people are like, that's very presidential. I'm like, it's not exact. I mean, sort of, I am the right hand to the superintendent. So I sort of serve as her proxy. But I basically coordinate and ensure that everything in the district sort of operates with her vision. I do have some specific bodies of work that I'm responsible for, and so I am the chief over human resources. So that's a big body of work when you think about, chief talent management. I serve in that role. I also oversee the public affairs, which is all of our communications work, and coordinate some large systemic strategic planning kinds of things. So that's what I'm doing currently. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and you're so good at it, obviously, because there has been, just at every turn, there's been increasing levels of responsibility
Right.
and just purview opportunity to have impact. So, um, and I would say public education does have this really obvious connection to service, to if you're craving that kind of leaving the world a better place kind of thing, then education I think has that really direct, obvious connection. For other people, they might have to work a little harder to like draw those connections, but
Mm-hmm.
you can
Mm-hmm.
always find them. So for me, I came from a family that was similarly dedicated to public service, and that was just the highest value of of work, like that they would really my parents would really advocate for. So, but for me, it's been very different because I think any initial ideas about that I had about what I was going to do didn't they didn't manifest in the way that I imagined. My career is like the exact one where you might imagine a straight line of kind of going from here to there.
Mm-hmm.
And mine's been anything but that. It's just been these one amazing opportunity after another, and being kind of in this place to make a choice, take a leap, and try something. So I feel like I'm that person that's had 5 careers at this point at
Yeah,
51,
me too.
but all around, federal government. I'm in federal government contracting. And so it's always been related to that. So in like somebody might look at a resume and be like, oh, that's 30 years of the same thing, but it really has felt very different in terms of what.
Hmm.
So these days I am a orals presentation coach for a federal contractor, and I also do executive coaching on the side. So
Well, and both of us are not really indirectly in the work number one, we studied to do, and
right.
came out of, and so, but sort of, I love that. I love that, there's not a straight line. I think that's something that's very appealing to sort of tell people, like, you can continually reinvent yourself, which is sort of the spirit, I think, of when people talk about midlife and like what's next. I feel like one of the things is I've started to learn is that reinvention doesn't have to be like a massive thing. I always tell people when they're asking for my advice about like career or other decisions, I say, like, first of all, never make any big decisions when you have big feelings, right? And
Right.
so, like, I would say, like, warning, like, if you're upset, angry, whatever, try not to make a big decision. But I also feel like sometimes we make everything too dramatic. Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, I had a bad day at work, or I've had a bad season at work, right? We've all
Right.
had that. Like,
Right.
I had a bad season at work. I need to change careers. I need to quit. And I'm like, well, maybe you just need to tweak something. And so I feel like some of where you and I are today are just like lots of little small tweaks. It's like a little bit
Yeah.
of this, a little bit of this, and then it becomes this whole other thing.
Yeah.
Because if someone says, how do you become a chief of staff? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like something I set out to do, but it is
Right.
a complete, like, it's the best job for what I do well. And so, yeah, I think that's so interesting how
Well,
we
and
both
I
do
think
that.
in what you just said to me is one of the keys that I would encourage people to think about if you're grappling with this question of what's next. And that key is one that it might feel like it, but none of us are deciding what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. It's just for this next chapter. And when we make it too big, that decision becomes overwhelming. And so if we shrink it down and just say, hey, I'm just going to make the next best decision for myself for right now, and it might be a year or two, it might be 5 years, and that's okay, because when I get to the next, decision point, I'm going to make another great decision. So
But I have something I want to ask you about, though, because one of the points I really was thinking about in preparing for our conversation was what I call the achievement treadmill, right?
mhm.
Which is like a lot of times we're very like there's a lot of milestones. Whether everybody's milestones are different, but it's like, I want to get married, I want to start a family, I want to get a degree, I want to own my home, I want to do whatever. And for a lot of us, we're sort of on that treadmill. And I, you know, I when I earned my PhD, I remember saying, like, I'll never go back to school. Like, I was like, check, I was like, check.
Right.
Funny thing is, when I became the chief of staff and I then was given the responsibility of being the chief of HR, I thought it was really important that I become an expert besides just showing up to work every day. And so I had to study and take my SHRM exam, which is the Society for Human Resource Management. I mean, I studied for 4 months. I was so stressed. I passed it, and I'm SHRM certified. But this idea of like goals. Now, you're a really goals driven person, and you love setting micro goals, right? Like, you love these things. But so when you think about, you're always setting goals. I don't actually have a goal right now, which sort of sounds really pitiful, but I'm sure you do. Like, what are you thinking about in midlife in terms of your goals? Like, and you have to explain your bobblehead as a manifestation of one of your goals,
Oh,
because I keeps looking
yeah.
at me.
Well, I will, yeah. So let me grab her gently here, because this is one of my most treasured things that you gave me with
And
our other
Carrie and
friends.
Benita, don't leave them
Yes,
out.
yes, with our other friends, our other two listeners here. And so this is a bobblehead of me, and it's about the Ironman. So that was all about completing Ironman, which had been a bucket list goal before I turned 50. And I did that back in 2024, which was an amazing experience. But it's funny because what you just said is part of you said, oh, I don't really have any goals right now, and that's pitiful. And that's part of the mindset that maybe without even realizing it, for people who tend to be goal oriented, not having one makes us feel like a little untethered, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, I'm just living my life. Like, this can't be right. And so I believe kind of two things are true. I totally agree that there is this achievement treadmill. Many of us feel like we're on it. Some of those big milestones, you kind of like knock them off the list relatively early in your adult life, like those ones that you just mentioned. And so some people can get to this point and feel like, well, you know, what is the next thing? It might maybe retirement or graduating your kids from high school or college, or there might be other things, but you kind of have to manufacture what they are. And the trap, I
Mm,
think, is when we get tempted to set a goal that is meaningful to someone else and not meaningful to us. And so
mm,
really, taking the time to reflect on, like, what is it that I want? How can I, because we now have all of this purview to just define what it is for you. You get to say what good enough is, and and then work towards that. I think when we get stuck in this cycle of just going for the next promotion, just as an example, because that's just kind of like what everybody does, and that's the next obvious thing. But really, if it's not what you want, then getting honest with yourself and setting something that's going to be more meaningful for you. Anyway, so I think that's especially important when we do have, possibly a limited number of years left professionally,
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I'm in public education, at the 30-year mark, you're eligible to retire. And
which is that's amazing.
I just started year 28. So
Yeah.
technically I'm eligible to retire in the fall of 2028. So there's a whole thing with the pension system, but I will have hit my eligibility in a little more than 2 years from now. And I could retire. But I want to work and I have lots to contribute still. But it sort of messes with my head because I could retire.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, like, is it really retirement when we talk about it in those terms, or it is sort of like chapter one and now I'm going to write chapter two? But that freedom to me is really hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to choose is really, I'm struggling with that,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not really sure what I want, what I want to do. I know how I want to contribute. I don't know that anyone would pay me for those ideas. I'd like to earn a living. I joked with my husband. He said, well, what's your dream job? I'm like, I would like people to pay me for me to tell them what I think.
I, I love that for you.
I know. He's like,
I think that,
I feel
let me
it's a
ask
little
you
bit of
this.
my job right now. I
Yeah.
do produce things, obviously, but I'm joking. But I'm like, I would like to be paid for my opinion. He's like, I'm not sure that's monetized. I don't think you can monetize. But I do think now that I'm going to be in this position to choose for myself, that makes me very uncomfortable. I'll be honest with you. I'm not really sure like what to do. I mean, I don't have to. It's not like the clock will, strike midnight and I have to clock out. I can continue to work, of course, but it's the possibility that it exists is is crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny because I feel like you're talking about a dynamic that shows up in big ways and in small. And
Mm.
for humans who we generally speaking love autonomy, we love the ability to choose. But the truth is, it's easier to have somebody tell you what to do. And so it feels hard and it puts the responsibility or the onus on us, which a lot of times feels uncomfortable. So what you're talking about is like a really big kind of life choice, but this happens all the time with like, just dietary choices or what kind of workout to do. It's just way easier if someone just tells you what to do. So
Well,
we,
and I'm curious because you're more of an entrepreneur. You have your own business. The idea of being an entrepreneur would scare me to death. Like I need I need to know I'm going to get paid every 2 weeks, and then I will work inside of that, and I will innovate, and I will do all kinds of entrepreneurial things.
Mhm.
But the idea of being responsible for creating, generating business or making money without that backdrop is really I admire that about you because I that's something that like makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. And 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 I totally get that. Having just come back into a full-time paid position, in the last year, I've thought about this a lot because it's funny when I started my own business 12 years ago, left big corporate, started my own business. There was a moment like a couple of months in where I was like, oh my gosh, I might never have to have a real job again. This is amazing. And
Right.
I never thought I was going to have to get a real job again. And then this opportunity came up and I'm like over the moon with it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love where I landed. But there is this constraining feeling that comes with um, not really having any levers to pull on
Mm.
income and impact. I am kind of within, when somebody pays you, their expectations are that you kind of do the job that they're paying you to do, which I'm really
Yeah.
delighted to do, but I don't have the same levers that I used to. So
Mm.
I do think that level of that unfamiliarity and that uncertainty around where your income come from and where like doing the business development, like that's very, very normal. Those are also skills that could be learned if you were interested. Now, that might not be something you care to invest the time in building those skills, but you
Sure.
absolutely could if you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially that's sort of the interesting part of being at this point. Like when you think about what's next, you
Mm-hmm.
know, is what's next for me going to another public school system at some point and doing a different kind of work? Is it, or is it going in a completely different career path? Many, many years ago during COVID, when, everybody was questioning their life choices, I talked to a headhunter because I was sort of curious and spent a lot of time talking to this person. And what was interesting was what she said to me at the time was, you have such a deep skill set that is also very niche. Like, she was sort of like, it's sort of what I walked away from is like, you're sort of stuck in public education. And I mean, it wasn't stuck in a negative way. It was like, you've poured yourself into becoming an expert in this industry and in this type of work. And so, like, for you to sort of you could transfer your skills to something else, but it wouldn't be like you're not going to drop out of this C-suite public education and pop into a Fortune 500 C-suite. Like maybe, but not likely. And I thought that was so interesting because in some ways it was freeing for me to hear that because then I was able to like reinvest in what I was doing. And so part of midlife to me also is like committing to reinvesting in what you already do well versus I think the inclination for people, which is to sort of pivot or go in a new direction or abandon what you're doing. The experience I had with her was sort of like, you know what, double down on what you're doing, like become even better at it. And I appreciated that. It really re-inspired me. And
Yeah.
when I came to the organization I'm with now, it sort of lit me up again
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, yes, like I am an expert at this. And so let's double down. And I made some choices associated with that. I went back to teaching at the doctoral level that year. I, sort of did some other things. And so it's just sometimes interesting. I think we think pivot, but it could be just like double down and reinvest in what you already are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a really broad universe of options and choices, which just that the
Yeah.
number of choices can be overwhelming for people. And my reaction to what you learned from this headhunter, she was speaking from clearly, I'm sure, a
Right.
lot of
Sure.
experience. And
Right.
and I think that like just from what you've shared, I would say yes, I would say that absolutely seems to statistically speaking, that would be the norm. And I work with a lot of people who are interested in doing that pivot. They're like, hey, I'm an awesome writer, I'm a great leader, I'm good at, strategic planning or blah, 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 but I've done all of that in federal government and now I want to do it in a nonprofit or something like that. And it's also possible. And I do think even people with depth in one specific area, well, the first thing is it's absolutely possible. And the thing that people maybe get hung up on is that you don't need to convince the world you can do it. You just need to convince one person.
Yeah.
And
Fair point.
because as soon as you make that leap and demonstrate that you can do it in two different environments, then all of this other stuff opens up. And sometimes where people get stuck is, well, here's my resume. Nobody's really like, I'm not getting traction. But the work is on us then to do the translation for them. Like, here's what I've
Yeah.
done. And I've done some homework on your environment. And here's how I would apply these skills in your environment to achieve whatever you're trying to do. So I
Yeah.
definitely think those pivots are very possible and people do them. But either way, it requires some thought and some work on our part to make it happen.
I just want somebody to say like, "Oh, you're so good. You don't even have to interview. I don't even need to see your resume.
Yeah.
Here's the job."
I do. I have this conversation every single day. Wouldn't that be amazing? It's like,
Wouldn't that be amazing? Like, yeah,
yeah. Well, I mean, I almost kind of feel like in some ways it's been a long, long time since I've been on a date. But
yeah.
like way back, like, when we
I'm
were
sure your husband's
dating.
glad to hear that, by the way, that it's been a
Yeah.
long time since words.
Yeah. That's true. He knows, but yeah. Um, but there are parts of that where like I have these conversations about, switching jobs, and it reminds me of how I sort of remember feeling back when I was
Yeah,
looking for a longer term relationship, just kind of like hoping this person would just show up. Which they
right.
ended up doing, just showing up in my office. I married my office mate. And but that's not really how it works. So you do have to like put yourself out there. You have to go on a bunch of bad dates or bad interviews
Yeah.
and eventually find the right match.
Although you introduced me to my husband too. That's always a
I
fun. It's the
I
most
know.
it's the most shallow 22-year-old perspective on life because this was exactly the conversation. You were a Smith, he was a Sergo. You were in the same like orientation group at the same company because of, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was a few years older than us, but young. We were all in our
Yeah.
early 20s. And you were working. I was in grad school. He was working. And I get, you're very friendly. So you're like making friends. And you guys went to the gym.
We
And you
did?
said to me, you gotta meet this guy in my office. He has the best abs. I'll never forget this
What?
story.
Oh
And
my
I was
gosh.
so
I don't even
shallow.
That's
I
so
was so
funny.
shallow that was all I wanted. I was like, oh, he has great abs. I'd love to meet him. Like literally, I didn't ask a single thing about his personality. I
That's
was
so
like, oh, he's
funny.
got great abs.
I don't remember ever seeing George's abs, but I'm absolutely sure that that's true. I remember not feeling, okay, hopefully he doesn't listen to this. It's not that I felt sorry for him, but he was new to DC
Yeah,
and
he didn't live here. Right.
he didn't have like a social group established yet. And of
No,
course we did because
we
you
adopted
know,
him.
yeah. So I was like, oh, hey, my girlfriends are going out or friends are going out. Why don't you come with us?
Right.
And he just started like attaching himself. And then I realized, oh, he was attaching himself like on purpose because he had the hots for you.
Because he like, right. Right. That was how we ended up on our first date was he called me, which was strange at the time because, we didn't have mobile phones. And he
Right.
said, where are we going out tonight? And I said, oh, I think we're meeting in Adams Morgan. It was one of those things. And he said, well, you got to eat first. And I said,
Oh,
well, I'm going to eat. And he said, well, I'd like to take you to dinner. And I said, like with the group? And he was like, no, just the two of us. And I think I called you and I'm like, oh, he asked me,
I
I think
think
we're
you're
meeting
like, I
for
think
dinner.
George
Like,
just asked
I,
me
I got to
out.
talk to him by myself. Anyway,
Well,
the
it
rest is
worked out. It worked out
yeah,
for sure.
worked
Yeah.
out. It worked
So
out.
it's so funny. Well, so one other thing I wanted to share about this question of midlife, like
Yes.
this, what's next? Because it really is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about in my work. But and the one thing that I want to impart most to people, and the thing I try to remind myself on a daily basis, is this idea that is so controversial. People just immediately react negatively, but I'm going to say it anyway. You can't make a wrong decision. And we get so hung up and like all twisted around about
Mhm.
trying to figure out what the right choice is. And this notion of right or wrong decisions is so flawed. And the reason is because we only judge a decision whether it was right or wrong, like in retrospect. We only like look back and say,
Right.
yeah, clearly it was the right decision to go on that date with George because it led to 25 years of this amazing life and you have these daughters and da da. Clearly that was the right choice. But the right or wrongness is something like we can commit to up front and say, look, like no matter how this works out, I'm gonna have my own back. And I'm not going to judge myself harshly if this doesn't go exactly how I think it's going to go, or it takes me in a different direction. So,
Yeah, I,
this,
I love that.
yeah. So I just want people
You know,
to free themselves from this idea that you can make a right or wrong choice and just make the next best choice for you and then see where it goes because you're going to bring yourself with you. And then when the next opportunity arises, you're going to make another choice and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I completely subscribe to that, and I give that advice to others, which is like whatever you choose is the right thing.
Yeah.
I think you have to approach life like that. and there are, of course, examples where there is a better or a worse choice.
Right.
But once you make it, I always tell people, don't see the whole staircase, just see the next step. Because I
Yes.
think, my mom always says to me, you have to worry in order. And I love that. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, because like I'm prone to worrying like completely out of order. Like
Yeah.
I'm worried about what is my child going to live in a messy pigsty when they're 35? Like, why am I worried about what my current 14-year-old is going to do 20 years from now? Like,
Right.
worry, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of this idea that someone said to me once, which is the minute you have children, you forgive your parents for everything. And what I love about the spirit of what that quote means is not that your parents need to be forgiven, but it's the idea like we're all just trying to do the best we can
Yeah.
and make good decisions, one decision at a time. And that to me, I think that kind of grace is really important in life in general.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so wise. So the only other thing I think that was on my mind for this conversation yesterday, I feel like this works its way into every single conversation I have, but it's something like, well, yesterday I was listening to this podcast. So I know both you and I, whether it's running or in the car or whatever, we both listen to a lot of podcasts. But yesterday I was legitimately listening to this podcast, and it was about regret. And and I think about regret because I think most people are trying to avoid future regrets when they're grappling with these midlife decisions. Like nobody wants to get to that last day of your career when you are like, really shutting your laptop kind of for the last time in a professional sense and feel like coulda, woulda, shoulda. And so this podcast about regret was talking about how it can be one of the most motivating emotions for humans to have. And
Mm.
and so I think it's kind of worth trying on. Like, what would, if you could kind of place yourself in the future and think about like, what might I regret not doing
Mm.
right now that I can put some building blocks in place to at least explore that option. And so I think it can be a useful framing to kind of think about like in the future, what might I regret? And I don't think it's good enough to be like, oh, I'm just going to live with no regrets, because no, it's just not realistic. But like, what's been in your mind or in your heart for all of these years that you just want to give yourself a chance kind of before you like officially retire?
Yeah, regret is really an interesting concept because I've regretted some decisions I've made in my life, mostly in my personal life, think choices I've made that I think hurt other people or sort of handled things in ways that I wished I hadn't. But one of the things that currently I think about in terms of regret is it, and just follow my logic for a minute. There's this thing have you seen this thing on Instagram about the parent who picks up their teenager? It's like they say like you don't know the last time you were going to do something with your kid. And so the
Oh,
mother stands up and says, I don't remember the last time I held you.
like I picked him
And,
up. Yeah.
right. And so they pick them up and they're like, like
Humongous.
15 years old, they
Right.
pick them up. It's what motivates me right now is this idea of I don't know what the last time is going to be for anything. And so I that's what I'm working on to help stay more presently focused. But like the other day, one of my kids asked me if I would go play with them. Now, I don't actually like to play. This is
I
just like
so
I'm
boring.
not
It's the worst.
I don't like to play. I mean, if you want me to like lay down and pretend I'm sleeping and you can like
Yes.
to, I like that, but I don't actually like playing. Anyway, that's sort
Right.
of maybe surprises people. But I'm like, immediately, I'm like, yes,
Hmm.
because I feel like she may not ask me again. Or when when it's past her bedtime and someone like, can I get in bed with you? Can I cuddle? Yes. So I'm sort of think about this idea of regret for me is about trying to slow down enough to say yes to things that I'm wired to say no to because we have a schedule and we have a thing and I'm busy and this, that, and the other. And so, they say the only people who will remember how long and hard you worked are your children or your family. And
Hmm.
so what I don't want to do at the end is to regret that I sacrificed an entire aspect of my life for work. That to me is the nexus of what the midlife sort of renaissance is for me. For
Mhm.
me, the midlife renaissance is about more balance, more perspective, taking time off that I don't feel like I can take, leaving work a little bit early so that I can make it to my kids' game, doing things that my work brain tells me I can't do or I shouldn't do because I don't want to regret not having done them. So that's what you said made me think about.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that, and I think I'm gonna adopt that for myself because I do it, but the pull is so real. Like even after, my just was it 2 nights ago, had finished everything I really needed to for the night, and Link wanted to go bowling. I'm like,
Mm,
I'm not a great bowler. After dinner, I kind of like just like really
don't want to bowl.
depressing,
You're not into it. Right.
not super not into it. But I'm like, but I said yes, we went out there, and the and but but then a text came in related to work. So while he was bowling, I kept feeling myself like want to go for the phone, and finally I'm like, I just got to put it in my purse and stop because he nothing was urgent, but that urge to stay connected to kind of like the day-to-day stuff is so real. So I love that,
Yep.
and really just just noticing when that urge comes up and giving yourself a
Mhm.
minute to make a choice. Like,
That's right.
where do I need to put my attention right now? So, well, good. Well,
Absolutely.
well, I love this conversation. Anything else you wanted to share before we sign off for today?
No, I mean, I fully resent being described as midlife for the record,
How
because
long do you plan on living?
I mean, I could pull out any other picture here of us and say we are looking exactly the same. Not
Oh,
really.
oh yeah, yeah. We look the same. Yeah. But I mean, if you do the math, we're technically midlife.
Apparently, apparently. But no, but I love the renaissance that women like us are having right now. What a marvelous time to be in midlife. And to be able to sort of really talk about it. I know our mothers did not have this sort of opportunity. It wasn't something people really discussed. And I think honestly, it's one of the best parts of my life that I've had so far. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited. I appreciated the topic.
It just keeps getting better, that's for sure. So, all
Absolutely.
right. Well, amazing to see you as always. And until next time, and I think next time
Until
we're
next
gonna,
time.
yeah, next time we have a really juicy topic. So make sure you subscribe and tune in for talking about the stories you're telling yourself.
Love it. Can't wait.
Love it. All right. Thanks all.